This is the corrections video for lesson 37. A couple of things just to remember before we get started. A natural up 1/2 step is a sharp. Up another 1/2 step becomes a double sharp. A natural down a 1/2 step becomes a flat, and down another 1/2 step becomes a double flat. Now, perfect intervals, which are your 1s, 4s, 5s, and 8s, can only become two different things. They can only become augmented or diminished. We indicate augmented with a plus sign and diminished with a degrees sign. Perfect cannot become major, perfect cannot become minor. Perfect is perfect, and it can only go once in either direction. Whereas our majors, if they're diatonically major, which is seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths, they can become larger once to become augmented. They can become smaller once to become minor, or they can become smaller twice to become diminished. That's why they're not perfect, because they can be manipulated in more ways. So, just a reminder, perfect is diatonic, meaning belonging to the scale, and major is diatonic or belonging to the scale. Diminished and minor are both getting smaller, and augmented is getting bigger. All right. So, in the exercises, it is asking us to name the augmented intervals. It's telling you already that they're augmented. So, we just have to count their size. Okay, now the reason that this is a fourth is because this bottom note F, B flat is normally what belongs to that key signature. And so we took that B flat and we moved it up a 1/2 step. We made it bigger by 1/2 step. So we took the flat and we made it bigger by 1/2 step. That's what augmentation is to make things bigger by 1/2 step. That's why this is an augmented fourth. All right, up next, this is a first, and it's an augmented first because the second note is a 1/2 step, sharp, higher than the first note. Next, we have an augmented third because in the key of F, the A that we normally have would be a natural, but because we added this sharp sign, we made it bigger by a 1/2 step. Up next, we have an augmented sixth. In the key of C, the type of A we normally have is natural, so this sharp sign made it get bigger by a 1/2 step. Up next, we have an augmented second because in the key of G, the type of A that we normally have is natural, but we added this sharp sign, so we made it bigger by a 1/2 step, augmented second. Up next, we have an augmented octave because in F, we normally have an F, and this is an F sharp, which means we made it bigger by a 1/2 step. And last, we have an augmented seventh because in the key of C, the type of B that we normally have is B natural. And because we added this sharp sign, we made it bigger by a 1/2 step, hence augmented. All right. On exercise number 2, we're now drawing these intervals. Okay, so we start by just drawing the quantity. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And lastly, a second. Touching buddies. Okay, now to make sure that these things are augmented, we have to pay attention to the bottom note. We're in the treble clef, so this is a C, this is an F, this is a G, C, F, G, F, and C. C has no sharps and no flats. F has B flat in it. G has F sharp in it, C has nothing, F has B flat, G has F sharp, F has B flat, and C has nothing. So we're now going to look at our top note and ask ourselves, does that top note belong to this scale? So in F, D is part of the scale. Only B is affected by the key signature, so this D does belong. So to make it a half step bigger, we have to take our top note and move it away or up a half step. Next, we have key of G. The top note here is B. B belongs to this key signature, and so we need to add a sharp to make it bigger by a half step. Key of C has nothing, which means F belongs. To make it bigger by a half step, we add a sharp. Key of F has one flat, which is B flat. The top note C belongs to the key of F, because we would say F, G, A, B flat, C. And so to make it bigger by a half step, we have to add a sharp to the top note. Key of G, G belongs, so we have to make it bigger by a half step by adding a sharp. Key of F, E belongs, so we have to make it bigger by a half step by adding a sharp. And lastly, C, D belongs to the key of C, and so we add a sharp to D. And you'll notice that the space for that is in line with D, not down by the C. All right. Okay, now diminished is the slightly trickier one. You'll notice that some of these only have one flat, and some of them have two flats. So let's go through and see if we see a pattern with that. We're just going to name our numbers. This is a third, fourth, octave, first, and I think this one is actually not in your book, so ignore that one. If it is in your book, ignore it. Otherwise, yeah, don't worry about it. Okay, a sixth, a seventh, and a second. Okay, you can't have a diminished unison because if you move the second note in either direction, it makes the space bigger, not smaller. Okay, so you're probably noticing that the intervals with double flats are the ones that began major, seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths. And the one with single flats are the ones that started perfect. That's because perfect, we only make it smaller once to get to diminished, whereas major, we have to make it smaller twice to get to diminished. All right, so we have F, G, C, G, C, C. In the key of F, we would normally have an A natural. We've made it smaller twice, A flat to A double flat. That is why it is diminished. A perfect fourth would be G to C. We only have to make it smaller once to get from perfect to diminished, so this is a diminished fourth. Same thing with our octave. We only have to make it smaller once. In the key of G, we normally have E natural. And so, in the key of G, we normally have E natural, so we made it smaller twice by adding two flats. That made it diminished. C normally has nothing. B natural normally belongs. We've made it smaller twice, which makes it diminished. And then lastly, our second, D, we've made it smaller twice, which makes it a diminished second. Diminished seconds are entirely theoretical because D down 2 half steps is C. So those notes actually sound the same. All right. Okay, now we have to draw these things. Let's go in and name the notes first. C, G, C, F, G, G, C, and E. And you guys, again, probably don't have that one because you can't have diminished firsts, so ignore that one. All right, C up a fourth is C, D, E, F. G up an octave is G again. C up a second is D. F up a seventh is E. G up a third is B. G up a fifth is D. C up a sixth is A. And we're going to ignore that last one if it is in your book, but I don't think it is. All right, now to diminish these things, we have to identify which ones started perfect. That's going to be our fourths, eighths, fifths. And then we have to identify the ones that started major. Our seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths. So we're going to lower the top note one time for each of the red ones. Okay, so in the key of C, we have no sharps, no flats, which means F normally belongs. So to diminish it, we're going to do one flat there. In the key of G, G normally belongs. So we're going to do one flat there. Now we're going to jump on over here to do the rest of our beginning perfects. In the key of G, D normally belongs, and so we're going to lower it one time by adding a single flat. Now for everything else, we have to move it down twice. Okay, so in the key of C, D normally belongs, and we're going to add two flats to get it down to diminished. In the key of F, E normally belongs, and so we're going to add two flats to get it from perfect or from major to minor and then minor down to diminished. In the key of G, B normally belongs, so we move it down one flat to get it to minor and another flat to get it to diminished. And then lastly, the diminished sixth, A normally belongs in the key of C, so one flat to get it to minor and a second flat to get it to diminished. All right, take your picture, submit it on Canvas.